Also, after yesterday's announcement, where I said that I picked up some Harley Bentons, here's one of my next projects I'm working on. Here's one of those Harley Bentons, the 3 pickup SG style. I just got through pulling out all the components so we can start fixing up the body, putting some insulation on the cavities. We're going to be replacing the tuners. We're going to be doing a full reseating of the frets, leveling them, recrowning them, and then putting some new, better electronics in there. We're gonna have to do some work for my preferred tuners. Get that to focus. So I got to fill all those holes, and we're gonna be putting a new nut in there. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun project. That's coming up. See you next time. Have a good one. Okay, so the tuners that I like to use are the Diodario locking and auto trimming tuners. They should fit in these holes okay. Actually, these look like they might be a little small. So once I get those in, I might need to drill these out and widen those up a little bit. But they definitely won't fit with these screws. The ones that I like typically have the one screw hole kind of offset to here. So what we've got a toothpick with the end snipped off, and we've got some wood filler. So I'm taking a screwdriver and getting some of my wood filler and spreading that out on there. Sorry, I'm trying to watch what I'm doing. I'm missing the camera angle. All right, getting that on there. And we're spreading that out, and then we're using our toothpick to kind of pack it in a little bit. Spreading a little bit more on there. All right. And we're just trying to get some of that filled in so that then we can put lacquer over it and get it nice and blended in with the existing finish. All right, gonna do that to the rest of the holes, and then this is ready, well, to dry. And once it's dried, we'll put some lacquer over it. Another thing we need to do is to get these cavities ready for the insulation paint. So, you know, if I fill in here, this is very glossy, slippery, shiny stuff. The sides here should be okay, but the paint's gonna have a hard time sticking to that. So what we're gonna do is get some sandpaper. You know, you want to go fairly coarse, somewhere 80, 120, something like that. But I happen to have a sheet of 150 that was already kind of broken into, and I'd cut strips off. So I'm going to try that. So I got my sandpaper here into cubes, and we're just going to scuff that up a little bit. It's hard to do one-handed. That's working okay. 80 would work better, but this will suffice. I'm not trying to get all that lacquer off. I'm just trying to get it to where there's something that the RF insulation paint can grip to. Okay, and now that we've got the inside of these cavities roughed up, it is time to go ahead and start getting them painted. So we've got our shop towels to put over the surface of this to kind of protect things. We've got our conductive shielding paint, and we've got our brush. So you're gonna hold this shut, shake, 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 shake. Get everything good and mixed up. Pry that lid off. And Just like so. So it's still kind of slipping a little bit. This I should have gone with 80 grit, but that'll be okay. That will fill in on subsequent coats because you need to apply 3 coats of this stuff, allowing for 24 hours to dry in between each. So I've done this without scuffing the inside of the cavities, and it works fine. You just get it as even as you can, and the next coat will kind of fill in the gaps. All right. Okay, time to get started with some fret work. But before we can do that, we need to make sure that we know what the radius is of this fingerboard. So I'm going to start. These Gibson styles are usually somewhere around 12 to 14, so I'm going to start with the 14-inch gauge, radius gauge right here. And we're going to put that on. And we're looking to make sure that there's no gaps at the end or in the middle. This, see, it's rocking a little bit, so this is not it. So we're going to move down a little bit. So let's check our 12. That's pretty stable. There's a little bit of wobble, so it might not be exactly 12, but we're going to put that right there as a reminder. Let's go ahead and step down to 10. All right. There's no wobble, but you can see in the middle there's a little bit of a bulge. And so I'm going to drop down to a 7 1/4 just to really emphasize that little bump in the middle. That's what you're looking for to tell you that this is not the right one. So definitely not 7 1/2. 10 has that a little bit. You can see right there. So 10's out. Both of those are no good. So 12-inch radius is what we've got. Now I'm going to check down here just to make sure that this isn't a compound radius fingerboard. And no, it's about the same. Both ends of the fingerboard, 12-inch radius, so we can use a 12-inch radius sanding block, and we are good to go. Okay, and now that we know what radius we're going to be working with, the next thing we've got to do is tape up this fingerboard to protect it. So I'm going to use my trusty painter's tape here, and we're just going to start kind of taping this off. Something that I like to do is I'll start here, and it takes a little bit more time. You can buy tape that has actually specifically been cut to lengths per roll for different frets, but I don't have any. So I'm going to take my razor blade and find the edge of that fret and just kind of trim down. And pull that up. Trim this back. Being careful not to score the wood too much. And there we go. And then that's still nice and straight for the most part, so I can put it up here on the next fret and move on. Find the very edge of that fret. There we go. Okay, and we will just keep doing that all down the length of the fingerboard and get this nice and covered. Okay, something I noticed whenever I was taping this fingerboard up is some of these inlays are not flush. Like there's a big hook there. I think that in particular looks like some of the super glue might have bubbled up. Down here it feels okay, but these not so much. I think feeling through the tape here, these are fine, but yeah, starting about here in this little middle section, those are all a little rough. So what I'm going to do is kind of stop with taping this off for a minute and get some sandpaper. I've got some 320 grit here, and I'm gonna try to tear it off to where it's pretty thin, so I don't want to get the frets themselves too much. And just kind of sand that back. Luckily, this is an unfinished fingerboard. You don't want to do this with like a Fender style maple fingerboard that has lacquer on it, because you will just ruin that neck. But on an unfinished fingerboard like this, go for it. Fix the issues you gotta fix. If you start losing some inlays, you know, you can always super glue them back in. That's why I tend to prefer unfinished fingerboards. Okay, and that's starting to feel much better. And it's looking a little rough right now, but by the time we're done with this, we're going to put some oil or some wax and various other things that are going to clean this fingerboard and have it looking nice and pretty again. Okay, now that we have sanded all that down and gotten those inlays set in a little bit better, I even had to apply some super glue to this one so it was moving quite a bit. Now we just need to kind of clean up. So we're going to take our fingerboard cleaner, spray it on our towel, and just wipe and clean up. And it's still going to look a little fuzzy once this dries, but this is going to help get all of that dust out of that wood grain. Yeah, look at that. Getting all that stuff out. And get it ready so that when we're through with our frets, it's more. So when we're through working on our frets, we can treat this fingerboard with some wax and make it look nice and dark and pretty again. Okay, and another thing that I noticed whenever I was sanding down those inlays is that some of these frets are a little bit raised. Looks like they're just not seated fantastically. So I'm going to take my fret hammer with the rubber end, and I'm just going to go down these and just make sure they're all seated well. If we get a little bit of flattening, that's okay, because we're gonna re-level these and then recrown them anyway. And I'm just gonna continue that all the way down the fretboard. Alright, and now that the frets are reseated, the next thing to do is to get ready to level. To do that, we're going to get a red or a blue Sharpie. Don't use black or green, it won't come out as well, and we're just going to mark the tops of these frets. Again, we're going to go all up and down the fretboard and just get an even line across the top of all of our frets. Should look something like this. Okay, so another thing we have to address with this guitar is when we did the insulation paint on all the cavities, we did get some of that stuff up here around the surrounding areas, which, I mean, it's mostly going to be covered up, but it's unsightly. It's pretty easy to wipe up at the time, but sometimes you miss it, you get in a hurry, or whatever, stuff happens. Easy to address. We just get some of our polishing compound here, shake it up. We're going to apply it to a shop towel, and then we're just going to give it a little bit of a rub down. And the polishing compound takes that paint right off. Some sections are a little bit thicker, take a little bit more rubbing, but you can see that's already coming off beautifully. Might need a little bit more compound to get over here, but now there it is, coming right off. All right, make sure that as you're doing this, you're wiping off where the polishing compound's kind of turning black and spraying out. And looky there. Beautiful. Okay, and now that we've got our top of our frets marked with Sharpie, red or blue Sharpie, and our fingerboard taped off, now we get to level these frets. I've got my 12-inch radius. Now looking it up, it says that the radius on this is supposed to be 13.75, but measuring it, it was a solid 12. So I've got my sanding block here. I'm gonna get that positioned nice and even in the middle. And we're gonna use long, even strokes all the way down the fretboard, all the way back. And I've got sandpaper, 320 grit on the back, on the bottom of this with double-sided tape. And basically what we're looking for is for that Sharpie to be removed evenly across the top of all the frets. Now, since this is a purchased guitar, not a built guitar, in theory, this should happen rather quickly. We're getting there. Still a couple high spots that aren't quite coming down. And next, now that we have our frets leveled, we need to reapply our red or blue Sharpie. Again, we're going to go all the way down the fretboard, applying our Sharpie evenly across the top. And the reason for this will become apparent when it's time to recrown our frets. And now it is time to actually start recrowning these things. Now, I've got two crowning files. I've got one that's got wide and jumbo, and I've got one that has narrow and medium. These are supposed to be medium jumbo frets. Now, your first inclination should be, okay, well, jumbo, so I want to use jumbo. But look at the... Wait, where's the thing? Focus, focus, focus. at the, there we go, at how short that is. So especially, we're looking at it this way, and we try to fit, where's the camera? There we go. Jumbo here. You can see that tall-wise it works, but width-wise, this is going to be much too flat, and it's just going to take the tops off of that again. Whereas, if we look at our medium, there you go. You can see that width-wise is going to work much better. So for medium jumbo frets, we're talking a jumbo height and a medium width. And so we want to use a medium fret crowning file. And having selected our fret crowning file, we're just going to position our file over our fret and file away. This can be very long and tedious, and what we're trying to do is that same where we marked it with Sharpie, we want that Sharpie mark to be one nice, very thin, solid line across the top. That's how we make sure that we're filing away the sides, but leaving the very, very, very top where we leveled the frets nice and intact. Okay, and here is what you're looking for with your fret crowning. So you can see the difference between these 4 frets here that I've worked on and the rest of these that were, flat tops and marked. And now these 4 all have a nice, even, very, very thin red line all the way across the top. So this one's maybe a little thicker. I might need to work on that one a little bit more. But that's what we're shooting for, getting them from here to here. And then we can move on to start getting them polished up and ready to play on. Okay, our frets are now recrowned. You can see they've all got that nice thin little red line all across the top. Very nice and even, just what I wanted. So now what I'm gonna do is I like to do a little bit of an extra step, and that is take some high grit sandpaper, like 1000 grit or above, and I go over the tops of these by hand. Not enough to really like take away much, but to just kind of round out those flat tops. The recrowning process got mostly rid of them, but I just personally feel like, whether there's evidence for this or not, that doing this, see, just a tad, not enough to really affect the leveling at all, but it just gives a nice little roundness to the very tops of these frets without affecting my level, and makes these frets feel really nice. Alright, and now that our frets have been leveled and recrowned, I could have left that tape on, went ahead and polished it and called it good. But I'm doing the full Mateo on this guitar. And so I want to go ahead and, before I polish, dress the fret end. So I'm going to start with just this bigger fret end file that I got. It comes with the Music Nomad thing. It's got the 35-degree angle. I could try and do this, but I found that I just kind of like the feel of doing this without that, and just kind of find the angle that those frets are at. And that's going to be shaking the camera, but and I'm just kind of trying to, these frets aren't really that sharp. They don't stick out that much. They've got that binding they're setting into. But there is a little bit of stuff, especially after the leveling and crowning process, where we've got some little shards sticking out. So I'm just trying to match that angle and knock all that stuff down. Okay, and once I do that on this side, I'm going to flip it to the other side and we will do the next part of the fret end dressing in the next video. Okay, and so the next thing I like to do as far as dressing the fret ends is I've got this Baroque, it's a fret crowning file, but it's a diamond fret crowning file. And it's got these three little notches, a narrow, medium, and jumbo. And instead of doing the full fret crowning, I like to find my medium here and come on this edge and just kind of work on rounding that a little bit. And it just means I don't have to do quite so much work with this little detail file. Okay, and last but not least, with our fret end dressing, we get our fret end dressing file here, and we're going to work on just rounding these frets. Let's see, is there a good angle? No, you're only seeing the bottom. Let me move up here. So I'm kind of coming and I'm curving in and I'm catching where it's kind of flat up against the fingerboard there. Just kind of rolling that in and then kind of coming over the top, rolling that in, just slowly and carefully rounding out all those edges. It helps if you're ambidextrous here and do it from the other side, as my boss says, so you don't get freaking carpal tunnel. We're going to kind of do the same thing, and we're just going to carefully work those fret ends, and shouldn't have to do too much work up at the top because I used that fret crowning file. And that gets us a nice little round knob at the end there. That's going to feel really good when we play. Okay, now that our frets have been leveled, recrowned, tidied up, and our fret ends have been dressed, it is time to polish all these up to a mirror sheen. There's a few different ways you can do that. You can use some very high grit sandpaper, kind of like I started with on these, moving up to like 1500, 2000. That does work. Or you can use some polishing compound, rub it in with a shop towel, or you can do what I'm going to do and use either, I've got a big old buffing tool here, or they make these little ones that you can put on a drill. The more you can use these and like blacken that up and get lots of compound in there, the better this is going to work. So I'm going to put some more compound. I do have the bricks, but I'm just going to use the liquid, or the, not liquid, but this stuff. But that's going to shake the phone, so we will be back to show the result. All right, those frets are starting to look shiny. That's about where we want that. And now it's time to work on the fingerboard itself. So we need a couple shop towels, we need our fingerboard cleaner and prep, and then we need our wax. It's going to be pretty quick and easy now that all that hard work is done. But we've got to get the glue and other residue off of this fingerboard. So we're going to use our cleaner and prep. Clean that fingerboard off. And make sure that we get that nice and clean. All the way down our fingerboard here. And I don't know if this is going to show up well on camera. These frets look pretty. Those ends are all nice and rolled. Alright. Fingerboard is cleaned. Time to go back over it with Monty's Guitars Monty Presso shop towel. And this is a fingerboard wax that also darkens and stains the fingerboard. So it's got conditioner to it. Acts similar to an oil. It's going to protect the wood and keep it kind of moisturized, keep it from shrinking. So once that cleaner has dried, we go back through and we apply our wax. We're going to go all the way down. Applying generous amounts. And you can be really generous with this stuff. I've used this on several guitars now and have barely made a dent in this container. So yeah, don't be afraid to really wallop it on. You can kind of already see a little bit what it's doing. It won't be quite this dark once we wipe it off, but it'll be close. Alright. We make sure we're getting that nice and even. We don't want there to be just like random light spots. And because it's wax, like if it kind of gets on the binding and stuff or on the frets, it's not a big deal. It's not really gonna stain too bad, things that aren't porous. The application does take a little bit of time, but it's not too bad. I mean, compared to everything else we've had to do, you know, compared to taping off the fingerboard a couple times and leveling frets, recrowning frets. And one good thing about the wax is it almost helps fill some of these, like there's kind of a big, I wouldn't say a crack in the fingerboard, but where the grain's a little bit bigger. I'm just going to fill in a little bit of that. Most of it's going to get wiped up, but you know, for some of these smaller cracks and things, this stuff is just really cool. I like it. And I learned about it watching Anderton's, another big music store over in the UK. So, hey, if Captain Anderton ever stumbles across this video, thanks for the tip. Because this stuff has worked wonders on many of my guitars. This is kind of a standard protocol for me now. When I get a new guitar in, I've mentioned this to my boss and thought it'd be nice to have some of this at the shop, but in order to use it, you know, I'd have to take all the strings off of all the guitars, and you know, I'm doing quick QC stuff. That's not really an option. But you know, it'd still be nice to have some on hand. Oop. Got a little splurge here. Let's wipe that up real quick. See, comes off easy peasy, no big deal. Double check it, make sure everything's all nice and even. Cool. And usually about the time that I've gotten all the way down the fingerboard, it is time that I can kind of fold the shop towel over so I have a clean section and start back up here where I started and start wiping it off. I kind of get on those sides where the wax kind of bled over as I was wiping. And just go all the way back down, wiping it clean. Might need to find a clean section of your towel every now and then. Oh yeah. We'll do a close-up zoom by on this here in a minute. Need a clean section. Ooh. Everything wiped off and clean. And there we have it. Sometimes you might need to do a couple applications. In this case, I don't think I'll need to. That fingerboard lapped that wax up. Okay. So, let's see. Lighting's not great. Let's see, maybe if I angle the guitar. There we go. Yeah. Focus. Nice. Okay, so one problem that we have is that these tuning machines don't quite fit the holes that were already in this headstock. So we're gonna have to address that. I've kind of gotten started here. First thing I did was tape off those holes with some painter's tape just to kind of help hold that lacquer in place. And now I've got my drill with a 3/8 drill bit. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna center that on that hole, make sure I support everything, and then start slowly in reverse. And I'm using this to just knock out that lacquer. I'm going to do that on all these holes, flip it, do it on the other side, and then we'll switch bits and actually get through this thing. Okay, and now that we have used a regular drill bit in reverse to kind of clear out the lacquer surrounding these holes and give us room to work, we're going to switch to our 3/8 Forstner bit. And again, I like to start in reverse. And having done that with a regular drill bit, it's also going to give this Forstner bit someplace to get locked and seated. Alright, and we start slowly. Okay, now we're going to move forward. go. And we will just do that on all these holes before we move on. And as is often the case with these types of things, the 3/8 bit wasn't quite enough to get us where we needed to actually fit our tuners. There was a little bit of damage in the drilling process, but nothing that's not going to get covered up with washers. So I'm really not that worried about it. But that's why we go through the process of taping and running in reverse and breaking that lacquer to minimize all that damage. It's rare that you're not going to have any. But I do need to widen these up a little bit more. If I jump up to a 1/2 inch, it's going to be too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file here, my round file, and just kind of carefully work around in this hole. Try and get evenly all around. Keeping it pretty straight because I just want to work on the wood inside there. And then let's see if we can slide in a tuner. Yeah. Some of these are going to require more work than others, but that's going to fit just fine. The next thing we need to do is make sure that we chamfer these holes a little bit. For that, I've cut some thin strips of 320 grit sandpaper. So I'm going to wrap that around my file and come in here and just kind of get at an angle and just kind of work around that hole. And I'm just kind of working on that lip and trying to minimize any places where that lacquer might get caught. Because if that lacquer gets caught and then it builds it up, and then it lifts it up, it could pull the lacquer off this headstock big time. Well, that's started. I need a little bit more on that. So I'll have to do that on this side and then flip it and chamfer the holes on the other side. And then we're good to start repairing damages so we can install these tuners. Alright, and now that our holes are chamfered, we're ready to kind of patch up some of the damage that was done and the screw holes and everything. So I've got my lacquer pen. A good shake. We're using a blonde. And we're just gonna, it's probably gonna take a few coats, but we're gonna start just kind of filling these. Just like that. So, gonna have to fill all these, let it dry, and a couple applications, and we should be ready to maybe do a little wet sanding and polishing and evening things out, and then we can mount those new tuners. Okay, with all that filled, it's not really gonna match that well, but it'll be okay. We'll manage. So I've got my solution of dish soap and water and my 1000 grit sandpaper. And we're just going to rub on that. So spray my sandpaper, wipe my stuff clean, and rub. Change out your sandpaper periodically. And you'll end up something, I actually ended up going a little too far here, but this is nice and even and smooth, and we've minimized the amount of different coloring that's present, and that should get mostly covered up by the tuners, so it should work okay once I'm done. Okie dokie, we have finished wet sanding and polishing up the back of the headstock, pushed my tuners in place, and I'm using sort of a straight edge, and I've already kind of done this, but just to demonstrate. So find something used as a straight edge and get these all nice and even and lined up And then we're going to take our drill with our small bit. We're going to find that tuning hole. We're going to run it in reverse. Break through that lacquer. Switch it forwards. And get us a little pilot hole started. And then go through, do that for all these, and then all I have to do is fit our screws in and then put our washers and nuts on there. And so here's the tip when you're replacing these tuning pegs. If you're just going by hand or using a wrench, it can be sometimes kind of hard to get them nice and tight. And if you're using a ratchet, it can be really easy to tighten these too hard and crack your lacquer. So what I do is I get my socket and I do it by hand and just twist until I feel it get tight. Okay, now they're nice and tight, and because I wasn't using a tool that gave me too much leverage, I made sure that I didn't crack the lacquer. And so also, after that's done, sometimes you get a little bit more room with your screws here. So it's usually a good idea to flip it back over and kind of tighten these screws up a little bit one more time. And next we need to secure our new nut. So first thing, just gonna get a shop towel. Just kind of wipe that, make sure it's clean. You always want your nut to go in a clean slot. Don't want to put your nut in a dirty slot. Ba-dum-tsh. All right. So it's a 2-ingredient job: super glue and our new Graphtec nut. We're gonna kind of just get that situated there, get an idea of where we're going to be positioned. We kind of want our ends to be, our end slots to be kind of equally on the fingerboard. Okay. Unseal our super glue. Some along there, some along there, and along there. Okay. And we've got just one smooth movement to get this done. We're going to hold it in place. Sometimes I like to kind of come along here and just put a little bit of super glue if I can. Just kind of right up along there. It helps if you have one of those long little, oh, I forget what it's called. It just kind of wicks it into those cracks. Okay. Good deal. Okay. Next up, time to install our strap buttons, which I like to use these Schaller strap locks. We've got some nice gold ones here. I've already got the felt and stuff on them, and that hole's a little tight, but it'll work. So one thing that we like to do is get a bar of soap. Might seem a little weird, but it works. And we're going to get a little bit of that soap on our threads. Not a whole heck of a lot, but enough that's coating. It's going to work as kind of an anti-seize and kind of help lubricate the screw as it goes in so that we don't damage our body. All right. And these use an Allen key, and we're just going to slowly and smoothly work that in. Might need to blow away some of the soap as it gets pushed up. Just keep working. Might get a little bit tight if the previous strap buttons didn't have a screw this long. Okay. And just get it snug, just like that. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other button at the bottom. And now that our nut has gotten set, we need to, there's a little bit of a lip. This is a little bit bigger than the actual nut slot, or the width of the neck there, but the important thing is that the spacing of our nut slots is accurate, so that's okay. This we can fix. So I've got sorry, this is gonna be awkward with how I'm holding the phone. Just a file, and carefully just kind of work on it, being very careful not to scratch the finish. I'm not going to continue with that right now, but you can see the results on the other side, nice and even. So that's what we're shooting for. Okay, well, now it is time to start doing some prep and getting our pickups ready to install. So I've already done a little bit. I mounted the pickups into the triple shots, which we've got our P-Rails here. And so now we need to get our wires connected to the little board here of the triple shots. So strip back the wire and the shielding for the big thing, and then we've got our 5 wires off the pickup there, and I've exposed and kind of twisted the ends. And right now what we need to do is we need to tin these wires. So I'm going to clean my iron. I'm going to pre-apply a little solder. Gonna let that smoke clear. We're going to hold up under the wire, and then take our solder and just kind of follow along down it. There we go. Yeah, that didn't really get it really good. There we go. Make sure you're holding it on there long enough to actually get the wire hot. Otherwise it doesn't do a whole lot of good and your solder is just going to stick to your iron. We can do a little bit on our ground wire here. Okay. And then you get little bubbles like that. All right. Clean our iron. And then stick it back in our holster. Okay. So now we need to use our clamps here. Hold things in place. Let's see, actually, how do I want to hold this? How about really kind of need it like that. So we will clamp it kind of here on the corner. Move that out of the way. Okay, and so our colors are we've got white, green, black, red, and ground. All right. So let's just start. A couple of these are missing holes. But that's where we can take we've got one of these, and I'll just make a little tiny thing right there. Well, we will just do this and see how it goes. Actually, you know what? Let's start with the green since it's right there and it does have a hole. And that'll help us to hold the white in place when it's time. You want everything positioned nice and solid before you start this. All right. Oh, these tiny wires. Everything else moved out of the way. Come on. That's one wire. Fairly decent connection. I think what I'm gonna have to do here is melt a little bit of solder. And that. And then put a white in it. Right. All of our connections look good and strong. That's what we want. And when you're working on stuff like this, make sure that you are making a note of what the different manufacturers are. So these are Seymore Duncan design pickups and Seymore Duncan design triple shots. So the color codings match up. If we were, working with two different manufacturers, the color coding that they use for their wires might not be the same. So just want to double check on that. So the last thing to do is just going to be to we're gonna do some wraparound here on our pickup. And figure out where that's gonna go. Let's see. Yeah, that's probably gonna be the best place for it. Peel that off. Stick it right there. There we go. And I will move this over here. So we've got a label that this is our neck pickup. That might need some adjustment, but that should be good to install. On to the next one. All right, so we are getting ready to move on. Right now I'm trying to figure out placement of everything so I can figure out how long I have to cut wires, but I went ahead, put the pickups in place, and I've got the wires running through. And then I went ahead and did the mods. So we've got our tone pot with two capacitors, a lower value cap on bottom for humbuckers, and a higher value cap on top for single coils, since we're going to be able to split between humbucker and single coil P90s and hot rails. And then I've got my 3 volume pots, and each one is wired for a phase reverse. So that's what we're about to get started on, getting all this connected up. Okay, now that we have our electronics wired in, it is time to set our nut slot height. This is a brand new nut, so we know it's going to be off. So what we're going to do, bring each string not necessarily up to pitch, but where it's fairly tight like it would be at pitch. We're going to press down on our 3rd fret here, and we're going to look at this gap just above the 1st fret. And we want it to be where if I push down on 2 here, that there's a little bit of a gap, but definitely not that much. So we know that's too much. We're going to loosen our string here, pull it off, get the appropriate nut slotting file, and just come in here and just kind of work that down. This is graphite nuts. This is going to file away pretty easy. And you do want a little bit of a back slope here, but not too much. It's really gradual. Just kind of follow. This is pre-slotted, so just kind of follow the slope that's already there. Let's see. And periodically, because you can always sand more, but you can't add what you've already filed away. We're just going to put that in, tighten the string up, and look and see what we've got. And this is going to take a while, but that's the gist of it. And then we're just going to go on down the line. Okay, we've got our nut slots filed. You can see, hopefully that's about, you can see that, or there we go, maybe there. And see, there's just a little tiny bit of bounce right there. That's what we're looking for all across the strings. But it's we had to file down pretty deep, and so this has gotten, I don't know, doesn't look as professional as I'd like. So I'm actually going to take the tops of this nut down, just use a file, just carefully. And doing it by hand like this, I can kind of rotate it and kind of give it a little bit of little arch to it, so it looks nice and neat. Kind of trying to go flat across all of the whole thing. There we go. We're starting to look a little better. Kind of turn it a little bit. There we go. Now all I got to do is take some high grit sandpaper to that to clean it up, and it'll look great. Okay, well, let's check and see if we got our nut slot height set correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some pressure here on the 3rd fret, and then I'm just going to kind of tap on the 2nd fret here, and what we're looking at is that gap right above the 1st fret. There should just be a little bit of bounce, and we want to see that pretty consistently all across, so that we know the string is low enough to have some good action, but not so low that you're not able to hit an open string. And next, let's check the action. Okay, and next thing we want to check on this is our truss rod, which I've already kind of checked and it's good, but we're just going to demonstrate here. So what I like to do is I'll put my pinky here on the 13th fret, and then I will take my pointer finger down here at the 1st fret. Might help if I rolled our volume back. There we go. Okay, and that's ensuring that we don't have our bridge and our nut playing into this. It's just purely the string over the frets, and then I'm going to tap around here in the middle, and just kind of like with the nut slot, right in the middle of the fingerboard, we should see just a little bit of bounce, because we do want a little bit of bow, but not too much, and that's about right. So we're good to go. All right, and my last thing to check here is going to be my action, and so we're going to be up here at the 12th fret, and what I like to do, that my boss showed me this, is to get one of these little Allen keys and slip that just under the string up at the 12th fret, and you just want the string, the bottom of the string, to barely kiss the top of that Allen key. Now, this action is actually a little bit high. It's really close, but it could actually come down a little bit. However, I've already lowered the bridge on this as much as it'll go, so I think we're just going to have to call that good. But that's what you're going to do to check that. And if we turn our volume up, make it a little bit easier to hear as it just want a little bit of just touching it. Okay. And our Harley Benton DC-600 project is complete and assembled and wired, and everything works Check that out. And this thing can do some crazy stuff. Each of our pickups is mounted in a triple shot, which both toggles together. Means that it is humbucker series, splayed apart like that. It is humbucker parallel. If they are both down, it is our P90. If they are both up, it is our hot rail. So currently I've got it set how I like it with the humbucker series, P90. So humbucker series in the bridge, a P90 in the middle, and humbucker parallel in the neck. Not only that, we have a 6-way toggle. So we've got bridge, bridge and neck, neck, neck and middle, middle, bridge and middle. And we have, let's see, and then also in our controls we have a push-pull tone pot. When it's down, it is a standard, I think it's 0.223 microfarad humbucker cap. Pull it up, it is a 0.437, I think is the right number, single coil cap. Each of our volumes is a push-pull as well. And basically what the push-pull does is it reverses the phase of each pickup. So this being our bridge pickup control, we can pull that up, and then in any position on our toggle switch that has the bridge pickup and another pickup, then you can put them out of phase with each other. And they each have the same thing so that you can flip phase in any combination. It's a crazy monster, and I'm looking forward to doing a full video on it here in the future.